Hi, everybody. Captain Lou here with another edition of Tigers Daily here on the Fan Arc Network. Happy Thursday, June the 25th, 2026. Well, it's not a happy Thursday for the Tigers. Last night in the series finale against the New York Yankees, Tarik Skubal took the bump for the Tigers, and on paper, you would think he probably would have the advantage. Well, Paul Goldschmidt said, I didn't read that paper, as he got two long bombs to lead the barrage for the Bronx Bombers over the Detroit Tigers. Goldschmidt, batting leadoff for the Yankees, stepped up to the plate, and the first at bat took Skubal deep to left field, 372 feet, to give the Yankees a 1-0 lead. And then with the game tied in the top of the third with 2 outs, Goldschmidt again went deep, a little bit deeper this time to left center. How about 427 feet? That gave the Yankees a 2-1 lead. Hey, Skubal was dealing. Other than Paul Goldschmidt, like we said, if it weren't for him, he would have had a no-no going into the 6th inning, because he was dealing. 9 strikeouts on the night for Tarik Skubal, but then in the top of the 6th with 2 outs, Jasson Dominguez stepped up to the plate, and he took Skubal deep again, and that made it 4-2 this time for the Bronx Bombers, and they didn't look back, as that's what was the final score in this one between the Yankees and the Tigers. So again, Tarik Skubal in the loss. 6 innings, 4 hits, 3 of them home runs, 9 strikeouts. Not a bad outing. Again, if it weren't for the 3 home runs, but like we always like to say, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, sometimes that's all it takes is one person to do the majority of the damage, if not all the damage. And in this case, it was Paul Goldschmidt. But don't take anything away from Jasson Dominguez. He got the game-winning RBI on that 2-run homer for the Bronx Bombers. They win 4-2. As far as the Tigers pitching, again, other than the 3 long balls, they look pretty strong, as the relief pitching shut down the New York Yankees over the final 3 innings. But the bats couldn't come alive for the Tigers. And one more interesting note about the Skubal performance, that makes it 28 straight outings for Tiger starters that are only allowing 4 runs or fewer. That leads the American League, but unfortunately for the Tigers, that doesn't mean a victory, as they dropped it against the Bronx Bombers, like we said. Now, we talked about the Tigers, the offense. They need more of it than what they've been able to produce lately. Well, they got 8 hits, in the game today on Wednesday, but unfortunately, they left 9 runners on base as well. Zach McKinstry stepped up in the bottom of the 2nd inning and got an RBI single to tie it up for the Tigers at 1 in the 2nd. And then when they were down 2-1 in the 4th, Ben Malgary got his first Major League RBI with a sacrifice fly to deep right field. That put the runners also in scoring position. But again, Zach McKinstry came up with a called 3rd strike. He struck out, and that made it 2 outs in the bottom of the 4th inning. Jake Rogers came up after that and hit one deep to right field, but not deep enough, and that made the score 2-2 at the time after 4 innings. In the bottom of the 5th, rather, Kevin McConaughey, who had 2 hits on the night, hit a double to straightaway center field. For a moment there, I thought it was gone, but then on the next at bat, he was thrown out on a fielder's choice to 3rd, and that really was about it for the Tigers' bats. So again, when you leave 9 runners on base with opportunities for the Tigers, it just wasn't meant to be on Wednesday night, as the Tigers drop the series finale against the New York Yankees, and they lose 2-1 in that series, and now they look ahead to the Houston Astros. So again, the Tigers losing this one 4-2. But if there's any silver lining out of this one, it is, again, the American League Central is as weak as the day is long, as the Cleveland Guardians beat the Chicago White Sox in their series finale. So those 2 teams are back tied for first place. What that means is Detroit is now 6.5 games out of first place in the American League, or 7.5 games rather, out of first place still in the American League Central. So still a lot of time left, but a very important series coming up, as we'll talk about a little bit later on for the Tigers. The Houston Astros come to town for 4 games starting tonight, and then Friday night, and then 2 afternoon games on Saturday and Sunday before Detroit heads out to the Bronx to take on New York in the first of a 6-game road trip next week. Now, we talked about yesterday on our show, Jack Flaherty. He was set to go for a rehab assignment. He went on that rehab assignment on Tuesday in Erie for the Seawolves. First time he's ever pitched in a rehab assignment, if you could believe that or not. And it's the first time that there's been a major leaguer with a rehab assignment since 2017 in Erie. Well, Jack Flaherty, he as well gave up a couple of long balls in 5 2/3 innings. But in between that, he struck out, or he retired 11 batters, struck out 6. So a good outing for Jack Flaherty. Now the question remains, where does he fit into the starting rotation? Will they give him the green light to come back into the Detroit Tigers starting rotation? Will it be this weekend against the Houston Astros? Starting on Tuesday, if he goes on 4 days rest, there is a possibility that he could pitch Sunday against the Houston Astros in the series finale. We'll wait and see on that. The rotation is set right now, and we'll talk about that in a few moments against the Astros coming up this weekend. But with a strong performance like Flaherty had, we might see Detroit and A.J. Hinch decide maybe we'll take a chance and put him in the rotation on Sunday. We'll wait and see what happens, but we'll go through the starting rotation coming up for Detroit here in a few moments. Now, sticking with the injury list and when Flaherty might come off, it looks like, as we mentioned, it could be Sunday, it could be Monday or Tuesday against the Bronx Bombers, the New York Yankees in New York on that road trip. Some others on the disabled list, or the injured list, if you will. Wenceel Perez. We talked about him. You know what happened with him with that freak accident, getting this orbital bone bruised. It wasn't fractured. Thankfully, it wasn't fractured, but his eyesight is still really blurred. And talking or listening to A.J. Hinch, he says it's going to be quite a while yet before Perez is even going to resume baseball activities. So not a good sign. Now, for those of you that don't remember what happened, last Tuesday in Houston, in the locker room, in the workout area, a workout band, a weight band or whatever, snapped and hit him just below the eyeball, the orbital bone area. His eye was swollen shut for at least 2 days, if not 3 days. So a very scary incident for Wenceel Perez. But now he's back in Detroit. He was in the clubhouse yesterday, but there's no timetable for Perez on when he may return to the lineup for the Tigers. And then Gleyber Torres, the word that I heard out of Detroit from A.J. Hinch, where he's on a slow ramp to recovery. So that doesn't mean he's going to be coming back anytime soon, it sounds like, for the Old English D. I would assume he may not be back till after the All-Star break. Detroit's got a 6-game road trip after this weekend where they go to New York and then they go to Texas. Then they come back home before the All-Star break, winding up with a big series against the Phillies in a interdivisional or whatever you call it, against the National League East. So Gleyber Torres' situation just as dicey, and boy, they could use his bat, couldn't they? When he came back from the last stint on the IL, he was tearing it up in June for the Tigers. But unfortunately for him, he's not going to be in the lineup anytime soon. But the good news anyways, getting back to Jack Flaherty, pitched very strong Tuesday night for the Erie Seawolves in his rehab stint. 5 2/3 innings, gave up a couple of home runs, but sandwiched in between them, he retired 11 straight batters. So a good sign for the Tigers pitching rotation. We will see when Flaherty may come back. Like I said, it's all obviously all up to A.J. Hinch, but we'll see what that rotation's going to look like if and when Flaherty comes back. Now, speaking of the rotation for the Tigers, they start the weekend set tonight in Comerica Park against the Astros. These are big games. Now, we said it at the beginning of the homestand. It was almost imperative that Detroit needed to go 7-3 on this road trip to maintain any realistic possibility of maybe hanging around for the divisional championship in the American League Central. I know it's crazy. Now Detroit's 12 games under 500, and we're talking about maybe a potential possibility of not only a playoff spot, but the division. Well, they took the first 4 games of the 10-game homestand, a weekend sweep against the White Sox, and the opening game against the Yankees. Well, they've dropped 2 straight now. So they're 4-2 on the homestand. To get to that 7-3 mark, they're going to have to take 3 out of 4 from the Astros. Now, the Astros come in, they're not exactly the 27 Yankees with this batting lineup. So this is an opportunity Detroit really has to take advantage of. Now, the starting rotation, as of today, it'll be Troy Melton getting the start tonight for the Tigers against the Astros. Then tomorrow it's going to be Kiter Montero taking the bump for Detroit. And then Framber Valdez on Saturday will get to go up against his old teammates one more time. Now, when he pitched against them in Houston, Valdez looked very, very strong. He's looked really good as of late. So it's great to see him getting back into form. And then right now, it's going to be Casey Mize taking the bump for Detroit, scheduled on Sunday. Now, I say that with a little bit of apprehension because, again, as we just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, Jack Flaherty had such a great rehab start in Erie for the Tigers. He may get the call this weekend. And if he does, that might bump Casey Mize over to the starting of the 3-game set with the Bronx Bombers in New York on Monday, and then Skubal would then pitch on Tuesday. So some things to keep in mind for the Tigers as they begin this weekend set against the Houston Astros. But again, I can't stress it enough how important this 4-game set is for the Tigers against the Astros. Both the Astros and the Tigers trying to stay within striking distance for a wild card spot in a very, very mediocre at best American League, where again, only 5 teams are at 500. It's absolutely insane. The Yankees, the Tampa Bay Rays, they're on top in the American League East. And then, of course, the Guardians and the White Sox in the Central Division, they're on top, but only a few games over 500. And the Seattle Mariners leading the West, just 1 or 2 games above 500 too. So not exactly setting the world on fire is anybody in the American League. It's ripe for the taking for the Tigers. So important this weekend to get 3 out of 4 at least from the Houston Astros. And it all starts tonight with Troy Melton taking the bump for the Detroit Tigers. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Tigers Daily here on the Fan Arc Network. I want to thank everybody for taking time out to be with us, however you watched us around the world here on Tigers Daily. Until tomorrow, Captain Lou saying keep your heads up, keep your sticks down, keep your feet moving, and as always, keep your minds open. So long.